Today we are looking at the Age of Absolutism, a period that spanned the 17th and 18th centuries, witnessed the rise of powerful monarchs who held absolute control over their realms. Among the most prominent of these rulers were Louis XIV of France and Charles V of the Hapsburg Empire. Their reigns would not only define the politics of their nations, but also shape the course of European history. Louis XIV centralized power in the French state by diminishing the influence of the nobility. One of his most iconic actions was the construction of the Grand Palace of Versailles, a symbol of royal opulence and absolute authority. Versailles was not just a palace, it was a tool of control where Louis XIV could keep the nobility close, ensuring they had no room to challenge his rule.
Did you see the new wing? 100 rooms, all for his attendants.
Hush, dear. He keeps us close and dependent. That is his true genius.
Through strict control of the nobility, Louis XIV created a system where power emanated directly from the king. L'État, c'est moi, I am the state, was the famous declaration that encapsulated his absolute rule. The king alone made decisions regarding law, religion, and military affairs, consolidating all executive powers in his hands.
Majesty, the treasury runs low. Shall we consult the Parliament before raising taxes?
Consult! No, Colbert. The law is the king's will, and my will is final. If the state requires funds, the state shall have them. There is no power in France that does not flow from this throne. I am the state. L'État, c'est moi.
Louis XIV's reign was marked by frequent military campaigns, such as the War of Spanish Succession. While his wars expanded France's borders, they also drained the country's resources and left it in a precarious financial state. Despite this, Louis' dominance on the European stage remained unchallenged, and his reign became the embodiment of absolutist monarchy. Before Louis XIV's age of splendor, another ruler, Charles V of the Habsburgs, faced the impossible burden of holding Europe together. Charles, born in 1500, was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 1519, inheriting a vast collection of territories stretching from Spain and the Netherlands to large parts of Central Europe. Charles V's reign marked the peak of Habsburg power. His empire was the most extensive in Europe at the time, but it was also one of the most fragmented. Unlike Louis XIV, whose central authority in France was unchallenged, Charles V ruled a patchwork of territories, many of which had distinct legal systems, cultures, and interests.
One day Vienna pleads for soldiers against the Turks. The next, German princes defy my authority. How can one man rule so many lands?
Majesty, the sun never sets on your empire.
Aye, and neither does my worry.
Charles V faced a constant challenge in managing his diverse empire. The growing power of the Ottoman Empire to the east, the Protestant Reformation in Germany, and the rise of France under Francis I all threatened his imperial control. But it was the challenge of reconciling the ambitions of his Spanish and Austrian branches of the Habsburg family that ultimately led to the empire's fragmentation. In 1556, after decades of struggle, Charles V made a historic decision. He abdicated, dividing his empire between his son, Philip II of Spain, and his brother, Ferdinand I, who took the title of Holy Roman Emperor. The Habsburg Empire, while still powerful, was never again as unified as it was under Charles V.
I have fought, prayed, and ruled too long. Let my brother Ferdinand and my son Philip share the burden. One head cannot bear two crowns.
Though their methods and challenges were different, both Louis XIV and Charles V left legacies that would resonate throughout Europe. Louis XIV's reign set the standard for absolute monarchy and the centralization of power in the hands of a single ruler, which would influence monarchs across the continent for generations to come. Meanwhile, Charles V's reign, with its complex web of territories and the eventual decline of the Habsburg Empire, illustrated the difficulties of governing a vast and diverse realm. His reign also marked the beginning of the rise of modern Europe, where religious, cultural, and political divisions would lead to the eventual development of nation-states. The Age of Absolutism was a time of great political and military upheaval, shaped by figures like Louis XIV and Charles V. Their struggles for power, their successes, and their failures not only defined their own countries, but set the stage for the modern world. In the end, their legacies would serve as both a lesson in the dangers of absolute power and a reminder of the complex nature of ruling over vast and diverse empires. In the Age of Absolutism, kings reached for the divine, believing themselves chosen to command not just nations, but destinies. Louis XIV ruled through splendor, Charles V through duty. One built a palace to contain his power, the other an empire too vast to hold. Their triumphs forged the idea of the modern state: order, armies, bureaucracy, pride. But their failures whispered a darker lesson, that power, when absolute, carries a cost no man can bear forever. Theirs was an age of grandeur and control, ours of freedom and complexity. Yet the question remains, how much power should one person or one government ever hold? Because the story of absolutism isn't just history, it's a mirror, and the reflection still stares back at us.